In one of my latest videos on saving money while traveling, I mentioned that I do not like the term hack. This word denotes an easy fix or method which is going to allow the user to skip all of the hard lessons in life, going directly to go and collecting the $200. Now, I know many of you young guys will not get that reference, but as an old guy who has earned his lack of hair and graying beard, I know that the strongest lessons in life come through screwing up and having to figure out better ways of doing things. So once again, I'm not going to give hacks. Rather, I want to go over some mistakes that I have made while traveling that have taught me a few life lessons. Number one, not doing enough research and not booking ahead. Now, I know this first one will be a bit of a contentious issue for some people that just don't like to book ahead. But I can tell you that I have never had an issue when I have booked my hotels or campgrounds well ahead of time. Not only do I make sure I have a room when I get to my destination, but I often save money. The law of supply and demand is always in effect. So if you pull into a town and there are only a few rooms available, then you are going to pay more than you would if you had pre-booked. Pre-booking also prevents me from having to potentially ride further at the end of a long day, as we were forced to do back on my first cross-country trip. In fact, it was the first day of our first cross-country trip in 2011. Our planned day was about 550 miles, but we ended up riding just under 700 miles in order to find a hotel room. If I had done proper research about the area we were originally wanting to stop in, I would have known that Lake Erie is a pretty busy place during the summer months. I mean, now I think about it and duh. But I'm from Massachusetts and I really had no idea. I didn't even think about it. Now, I know some will say that booking ahead is dangerous and that it forces you to ride further to achieve a goal, rather than basing your day on how you feel. And while this sounds logical in practice, I have never found this to be true. I simply set real-world, attainable goals as far as my daily mileage goes, and I have never experienced difficulty in reaching my planned destinations. On the other hand, when I did not book, I found myself riding further than expected to find a hotel or campground. When I have reasonable predefined goals, I don't ride until I'm tired. But if I don't plan and I base my ending location on how I'm feeling or when I get tired, that is when I ride further than I should have. Personally, I think the latter is more dangerous, but everyone has to do what they think is best and what they enjoy. Number two, check your tire pressure on a daily basis. Now, this is a habit that I have always tried to keep, but on our ride to Alaska, I neglected to do it for a couple of days, and I almost paid for it. Now, up to a point, I was very diligent with my pressure checks, but on the way home, I was getting tired, not sleeping well while camping, and my pressure was holding well, so I chose not to do it for a couple of days.
All right, we had a little minor disaster here. I pulled off the road here in Teslin. We're headed to Watson Lake. And I noticed my bike was handling funny. Turns out I had a flat tire in the front. We checked it all out. Peter went in and got some water, some soapy water from the folks here. But we found no leaks in the tire itself, but the tire had come off the bead.
We were able to fix the issue, but of course, this could have been disastrous if it had happened at higher speeds. Now I have the bike with TPMS, so it's not such a big deal, but I still check my pressure before every day's ride, and I'm going to keep doing that as long as I am traveling. Number three, a good night's sleep is very important. So speaking of being tired and neglecting important safety checks, I learned that camping, at least for me, is not the way to go when on a long trip. The process of riding, setting up camp, not sleeping well, breaking down camp, to do it over and over again day after day is just not one I enjoy. In particular, not sleeping well on a motorcycle trip can cause you to make mistakes, as we just talked about, and that's not good for obvious reasons.
I didn't get much sleep last night. It was a tough
tough night for me, camping. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do tonight. I may end up going and finding a hotel room.
For me, I have learned that camping is something to be enjoyed when I can set up in one location for at least a couple of days and then do it all at a very relaxed pace. The lesson here is to travel the way that is best for you and not the way your companions or social media friends think is cool. So number 4, traveling with a half helmet. So again, I know this is going to be a little contentious, and of course you should do what works for you, but for me, I have learned that using a full face helmet is much more relaxing, as well as being safer on a long trip. I have traveled with a half helmet, and while it's very cool, as far as temperature goes, I found that my ears hurt physically from the wind beating on them, and it also damaged my hearing. In addition, as someone that rides through inclement weather, not being able to see and having rain and hail pelt my face, well, I think that was just stupid. I was traveling on the Blue Ridge Parkway through a rain and hailstorm. My wife was on the back, and finally I just said, okay, enough of this. I'm getting a full face helmet, and we have never gone back. And speaking of damaging your hearing, I also suggest earplugs, especially when doing long days on the interstate. Number 5, not keeping your skin covered and not staying hydrated in hot weather. Now, this is not one that happened to me, but rather to a riding companion. We were traveling through Kansas in 2011, and it was 114 degrees Fahrenheit. At one of our stops, my buddy decides to take his jacket off, and I warn him that I don't think that's a very good idea. He, of course, brushed me off, assuring me he would be fine. Well, after a couple hours, we stopped again, and I could see that he was red-faced and not looking very good. He then says to me, "Craig, you were right. I should have kept my jacket on." We had to then take an extended break to get him rehydrated and cooled down before we could continue. While the wind does have a cooling effect at temps under 90 degrees Fahrenheit, when you reach those warmer temperatures, the hot wind will actually make you even hotter. At 90 degrees Fahrenheit, traveling at 60 miles per hour, the effective temperature is 96.9 degrees Fahrenheit. At air temps of 100 degrees, the wind effect is 111.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And at temperatures of 114, as we were traveling through Kansas, for example, the wind hitting your chest will effectively be 131.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When traveling in really hot temps, keep your skin covered, allowing just enough ventilation to help evaporate sweat, and stay hydrated, drinking constantly throughout the day. Now, if you don't believe this, well, go play with the wind chill calculator that I've listed in the description of this video. So number 6, not taking enough time off the bike. Now, over the years, I have found that taking at least one day off per week while traveling is a must. Riding day after day for long periods leads to exhaustion and staleness. A trip can easily become drudgery if you do not take the time to relax and maybe see some cool things along the way. Having a day off to do laundry, to rest, and maybe read a book keeps things fresh, and when it's time to get back on the bike, you start looking forward to it. The lesson for me is to slow down and enjoy the trip. Taking time off is good. Number 7, make sure your travel companions are compatible with your riding style. Now, building off of that one that we just talked about with my wife, it's very important to make sure that the people you are traveling with are compatible with in your personal style. If you are relaxed and your buddy is high-strung, that could lead to some conflict. If you like to rise early and your companion likes to sleep in, again, this can be an issue. Now, I have experienced this a couple of times, and it can really screw up a trip and in some cases lead to dangerous situations. This is why I am very careful about traveling with other riders that I do not know. It is, of course, possible to find compromises, but all parties have to be in agreement. The lesson is don't go on long trips with people you have not ridden with and gotten to know very well. Number 8, riding longer than you should. Now, this one actually comes from my wife, Kathy, who after her accident in 2018 joined me in 2019 for 16 days of my 60-day trip. She had been feeling pretty good and was looking forward to the trip, but after 12 days, she was feeling pretty tired. While she enjoyed her time with me, if she had to do it again, she would have shortened her part of the trip by a few days. The lesson here is that you need to be honest with yourself about your age, condition, and stamina. Set goals that are attainable, and it is good to challenge yourself, of course, but if that causes you pain, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. So number 9, listening to other people rather than that little voice inside your head. Now, this happened to us on the Blue Ridge Parkway just before that rain and hailstorm that I was talking about that made me switch to full face helmets. Right, Kathy and I were leading and we noticed the threatening sky, so we pulled over to put on our rain gear. Well, the 2 other couples that were with us asked us what the hell we were doing. And we told them about the rain clouds up ahead, and they said, no, come on, we can push through it. We'll get right around this storm. So we relented, even though we knew better, and we continued riding. Well, about 5 minutes later, guess what? The skies opened up, and we were quickly soaked and freezing. Now, of course, we were up in the mountains and there was literally no place to pull over for quite a long time. Eventually, we made our way to Little Switzerland and we found ourselves removing all of our wet clothing under an overhang in front of somebody's room. I'm sure it was quite the sight, and I'm surprised there haven't been pictures posted about it. But we learned a lesson, right? That even with peer pressure, listen to that little guy inside your head, not to your buddies. Now, I'm sure we could go on from here and list many more things, but I think that these are the major lessons we have learned while traveling. I am sure there will be many more in the years to come. So let me know if there are lessons that you have learned while traveling. What are the mistakes that you have made, and what did you learn from them? All right, guys, ride safe. We'll see you next time.